So I've been a Green Party supporter for a while. I basically, in every election since 2012, I voted for Obama in 2012 just to keep Romney out, which might not have really been any difference, but be that as it may, since that election, in every election, national or statewide or county or municipality, I've always voted for the Green Party if they were ever on the ballot. So I voted for all the local, state, California Green candidates, and I voted for Jill Stein, and I voted for Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker. And, I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. I voted for Howie in 2020. And I was starting to get a lot of hope for the Green Party. Partly just because it seemed like, at least, I still have hope for the Green Party voters, people who voted Green, and I still think I still like to work with them. But the Green Party itself, it is what it is. I'm not saying it's worse than any other party. It's probably not. Like, if I had to choose between all the parties that exist right now, I still might choose the Greens just because they're the leading leftist party, and I think it's great that they have branched out, and the way that Howie, I would say the way Jill Stein worked with the Bernie people, at least eventually. I don't know. I think in 2015, she was kind of maybe still making noises against him. But by 2016, she realized that, she was not going to have a future in the left if she's just trashing Bernie all the time. So she reached out to, I think she basically advocated for, a fair primary for Bernie, and she offered, or she was, basically trying to offer the Green nomination to Bernie, either basically to make him her running mate, or basically or that she would be his running mate on the Green ticket. So that's great. That's the exact type of left solidarity that we need, is people that are not hung up on parties, and people who are willing to make alliances for the left and for humanity. And, I think she ran a great campaign, and she brought in a lot of Bernie supporters, apparently, and not enough. It's hard to know. It's not like I ever trust the official tallies, but if the official tallies are anywhere near accurate, then it was a pathetically small amount of people who voted for her, and the rest of these. It was like more Republicans were willing to vote for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, than Democrats who are willing to vote for Jill Stein, or just anybody. Most voters are basically independents. Like the largest, category of voters are independents, and even they couldn't vote for Jill Stein. So either the numbers are completely wrong, and it was 10 times that number, in which case, okay. But if it's anything close to the official tally of how many people voted Green. It was abysmal. I mean, she did better. More people voted Green than probably ever had. So it was like, I don't know, 1% or something. After like 2 decades of them, or so, 2 or 3 decades of them running. And, like I voted for Al Gore, and I was, I honestly was among those who hated on on Nader, because Nader said, there's no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. And I was looking at George W. Bush and Al Gore, and I thought there was a difference, and it just seemed like disingenuous to be telling people there was no difference. I voted for Gore. Didn't matter, the election was basically rigged. And if it was that election again, I might vote for Gore again, because there's a chance that Gore is not as depraved as these others. Although I have learned more about Gore since then, and about what he did in the 80s, and with Tipper Gore in terms of censorship. And so now, I understand why people were like, screw Gore, we're voting for Nader. But I, did the calculated. I mean, I thought Nader would have been a better candidate, a better president, but like with his policies. But I just knew that he didn't have the numbers to win, and I thought there was a significant difference between George W. Bush and Al Gore. And there's a chance maybe if Gore had gotten in, maybe we wouldn't have had the invasion of Iraq and all that. But I could be wrong. It could be that they both work for the CIA and basically would have done that anyway, because that was planned out, Project for a New American Century. So be that as it may, I no longer judge people who supported Nader then. But it's a confusing situation. But I believe in voting for the lesser of two evils if those are your only choices. If those are literally your only choices, by all means, vote for the lesser of two evils. But that's why I have not voted. That's why I voted Green every time for the last, 7 years or so, because the Democrats and the Republicans, they just presented basically almost identical evils, with I mean, I think I voted Green, or maybe I just didn't vote when it was Bush versus Kerry, because I think I was on my way. I was traveling to Ireland for research, and I just didn't have time, and I didn't care. Like I would have voted Green, I'm sure, but like I didn't care versus Kerry versus Bush, because it's like really the same thing. It's not. I mean, I'm not saying maybe Gore was the same as Bush in a very, very subtle, sneaky way, but blatantly Kerry was Bush. It's obvious, Kerry basically presented himself as like, I'm a warmonger, but I'm a Democrat. Vote for me. So, he got that warmonger Democrat vote. People who are like, well, I like warmongers, but I'm a Democrat, so I'll support Kerry. And of course, he didn't win, because America would rather an honest conservative than a right-winger posing as a Democrat or a liberal or whatever. Plus Kerry, I don't know, he's just kind of repulsive personality, repulsive type of, he kind of seems just stuck up. And whereas Bush has his way of like, you know, putting on his yokel hat and acting all like down home or whatever, which is like probably totally fake, but the fact that he got hated on it by coastal elites just helped him win over like regular people, because a lot of those regular people knew that it was partly or largely class, you know, class warfare. Like when people say, oh, you know, they make fun of George W. Bush's like southern, you know, country Texas accent, they're largely like trashing poor people, or at least poor rural whites. So that just drove, you know, poor rural whites, who are most, you know, at least geographically, the vast majority of the country is occupied by them. So they win in an electoral college system. And yeah, so Bush won. But, which was fine by me. I would have rather, obviously, the Green candidate, whoever that was, I guess Nader. Although I still resented Nader a bit for pretending that there was no difference between Gore and Bush, because I think sometimes the Greens get out of hand with their rhetoric and their basically simple-mindedness. You know, it's like the Republicans and Democrats are obviously, they have very simplistic narratives that are nonsense, but a lot of times the Greens do too, and some of that can be that, you know, that they can't even acknowledge like anything good about another party. I mean, that's basically one of the main flaws of all the parties. Like, they have to always they're always good and the other side is always bad in every way, which, to maintain that, you basically have to be dishonest to maintain that narrative. Sorry, I don't know why the light is like going in and out. Super cool YouTube or camera or phone thing. Anyway, but when it was Bush versus Kerry, it wasn't the same. Kerry was not Gore. Kerry was a war hawk, you know. And the fact that that there's Democrats, like any Democrat who likes Kerry is either like the majority of people who, I mean, most people, if they don't know anything about politics, they won't even know who Kerry is. So I'd say most of the Democrats who like Kerry are right-wingers. You know, they have no leftist bone in their body. They just maybe virtue signal when it's time to do the BLM or do the whatever. But they're right-wingers. They have no leftist impulses, or else they would hate John Kerry. You know, I mean, I guess John Kerry was supposedly cool back in the day when he was some kind of anti-war or whatever, but then he became the exact opposite. So, and then when it was Hillary, again, you know, she was a warmonger. I mean, the thing is, the something that Bernie has said, but he likes to forget, is that the worst foreign policy blunder of our time, and perhaps in American history, was the invasion of Iraq. You know, I mean, to me, like, if that's not a big deal for you, you're my enemy. You know, like, those people ruined the world. They ruined this country. We had, like, you know, a good stretch of no major wars. You know, we had obviously Desert Storm, and there's Iran-Contras and stuff like that. But between Vietnam and Bush's, you know, shrub, like George W. Bush's invasion of Iraq, there was no major U.S. engagement. Like, I mean, I'm sure there were a million things that were still pretty major engagements. Obviously, it was Kosovo and I'm sure there were things going on all over, Africa and the Americas and Asia and stuff, but at least like a major war where they're like sending a bunch of troops to die, and it just I grew up basically learning about the 60s, learning about the anti-war movement and Vietnam and everything, and at least thanking my lucky stars like that we didn't have a major war like that. But then, and not to say that it was like Vietnam, but it was terrible. They destroyed a country. And I mean, I guess, they would say that, there's the argument that Bush was trying to like help Iraq and like, free them from tyranny. And I mean, best case scenario, that's the kind of accidental upshot of it. If they can succeed in kicking us out, the way that they're trying to kick us out and actually take control, because we put Saddam there in the first place. So, I mean, if we removed him thinking that we were going to take more direct control, and then we accidentally install a democracy that actually kicks us out, that could be good. But nevertheless, anybody who supported that war, like if you're a Kurd and you supported that war, then I have no problem with that, because you were at war with Saddam Hussein. If you're an Iraqi Shiite and you supported that war, or anybody from Iraq, and you supported that war, then okay, you were like, there were people who did support the invasion. I'm not sure how many, probably minority of Iraqis, at least, and yeah, but anybody else, like, and people who still support it, and people who support people who supported it, are basically so far afield of like acceptable human morality, like it was a massive war crime, and nobody involved in it should be allowed anywhere near government of any kind. Like they should not be allowed to, they should be in jail, right? I mean, at the very least. And so that's Kerry, Bush, Hillary, and Biden. So everybody who's run for president in the last like however many years, and I think Romney probably, he probably supported the war too. So basically everybody except Obama, but yeah, I mean, that's the only way I was able to bring myself to vote for Obama, even though I knew he was pretty establishment himself. I was like, well, at least he claims he was against the Iraq war, and he's at least not like these scum who are openly still justifying the Iraq war, or justifying their role in bringing it about. So anyway, I voted for all these Green Party candidates because they were actual leftists. I thought of voting for the Libertarian as well, because I agree with them on civil liberties issues. Certainly not on economics or property issues, but property inequality and all that. But it's hard to know, because the Greens are not libertarian enough, and the Libertarians are not green enough. But I thought it was great the way this cycle, Howie reached out and basically joined with the Socialist Party. I forget what the exact name of that party is, but basically one of the American Socialist parties. And I think Angela Walker might have originally been running in that party. I'm not sure, but yeah, they were both basically nominated by both the Greens and the Socialists. So that's a great step forward. That's exactly what we should be doing on the left and just in general. But part of that is, like, it's great to have left solidarity, but if it's a kind of left solidarity that alienates people who are not leftists, then it's useless. It's worse than useless. You know, it will damage the left. You know, the only way the left can succeed is by branching out, and not by saying we are the high priests of morality, we are the only people of virtue, and anybody who isn't indoctrinated the exact same way, or, you know, like doesn't have all the exact same beliefs as us is a Nazi. That's like I think that's the more common manifestation of quote unquote leftism nowadays in the West and in the US. I mean, there are actual leftists who, you know, promote solidarity and try to organize workers and reach out to people, but I feel like for every one real leftist like that, there's two like edgelord, you know, like lefties who just, you know, hate, like politics for them is just like a tribal thing where they hate the other side. And they often have very little idea like what's actually going on or what things are about, but they just can memorize what their side is yelling. And it's usually that the other side is evil, or basically that everybody who doesn't yell whatever they're yelling is evil. And that most plainly is shown with the Greens in their treatment of the Georgia party, the Georgia chapter of the Green Party, which basically, I don't know all the details, but basically they put forward a gender critical platform, a kind of anti-TRA, basically condemning like the excesses of modern trans rights politics. And I think that they were opposing the drugging of children who have gender dysphoria and the kind of, I guess, either hormones or puberty blockers or whatever that are given to children who say they identify as the opposite sex or gender or whatever. So, like, I mean, for me, this is like, I'm 100% with the Georgia chapter. And I think that, I mean, I don't know whether the exact route that should be taken in terms of this, but I certainly think that people who actually promote the drugging of children, whether it's for ADD to make them you know, stop fidgeting in class, or whether it's because they have gender dysphoria or they identify as the opposite sex, I find it very immoral to I mean, I guess I can understand on some level if some parent caves into their child because they kind of just, they love their child, and their child somehow knows magically what this hormone will do to them, and they're like, oh yes, I've never done this before, but all these people who are making money selling it say that it will help me, so I need it. And then the parent might just kind of acquiesce because they want to help, they love their kid. I'm a lot more forgiving of that than I am of people who actually promote this stuff, people who actually treat the puberty blockers and hormones, whatever, given to kids as and just encouraging kids to like that, you know, like that they might be trans, like that you know, like that if the child comes to it on their own, that's one thing. But if the parent's asking them, do you identify as this or that, you know, like I feel like a lot of that they probably, they're probably leading questions. And, I've seen like instances of people online, like women saying, I have all these boys, I always wanted daughters. And then the next photo they post on Instagram, all their little boys are in dresses. And then the next photo, they're all girls, quote unquote, it turns out my boys are identify as girls. I got daughters after all. So then that, I will strongly suspect that that those boys didn't come to it on their own, or those kids didn't come to that on their own. And just people in the public sphere talking about this stuff like it's some settled, established science that if you do these, puberty blockers or hormones or whatever it is, or if you, just on that issue, like that will make your life better, and then you'll finally be what you were meant to be. These are drugs, like big pharma, whatever is selling them. I would highly doubt that they were that anybody was born and with just like the need for these drugs, like that these drugs were just meant for you, and they're just there. They just came from heaven to like help people. Like I mean, pharmaceutical industry just has a long Frankensteinian history of butchering humanity in various ways and calling it medicine, or calling it psychiatry or whatever. So yeah, I'm very much against that. And the Georgia chapter of Greens is against that. They, they put forward some statement on that, and the rest of the party condemned them basically, or at least, all the woke SJW, PC people like condemned them, and they're now trying to kick them out of the party. Apparently hasn't actually happened yet. I don't know. I've heard mixed reports. Somebody was telling me they were already kicked out, that they and the Alaska party were already kicked out. But recently I was hearing that it's not really, it's still in negotiations or whatever. So I'll say, if they make amends, if the party makes amends and says, oh, we realize that you have the opinion of the vast majority of the working class in this country and in the world, and therefore we will not kick you out of our party because, we're not going to, it's probably too much to hope that the party would ever, or would anytime very soon, realize that they're wrong about this and that they're child abusers by trying to drug children. But if they could just realize, like, okay, this is the majority opinion, agree to disagree, we can all be one party, then I would try to stick with them, and I would try to build solidarity and left unity and populist unity and everything. But they they didn't. And so far it seems like the party is just doubling down against them, or especially a lot of the activists that are conspiring against them right now and trying to take over the state party. And so that was very disturbing. But that happened, I think, either last year or I think it happened it started last year maybe. Or maybe before that even. But and then Howie Hawkins himself, people were calling him a TERF. They were woke scolding him because he misgendered Chelsea Manning, in an interview. And then it was awkward. It seemed to have been like by accident, and he just, because he had been supporting Chelsea Manning, who was Bradley Manning, for for years. So he was when you've been saying somebody's name for years, it's sometimes hard to like switch it over. So he said Bradley, I think it's Bradley Manny. And then he said, oh, I mean Chelsea, or whatever he's called right now or something. So, that, like, some people might have interpreted it as he was trying to rub it in, but honestly, I think he's so new to this type of gender stuff that he really didn't mean that. He was not trying to offend anybody, and he was not trying to like castigate Chelsea Manning or anything like that. But like, he got woke scolded and canceled by a lot of people for that. But then I mean, I still love Angela Walker and Howie, basically, because they stood up for America. They were the leading leftist candidates, and everybody in the world, was all the powers that be, were yelling at them and trying to cancel them and demonize them, and they just kept right on campaigning, and I thank them for that. They were trying to give us health care and everything. And also, I've followed them both on Twitter, and Angela followed me back, which I thought was very cool, follow a small account. And, I talked to her a couple of times. She was very nice, very, very helpful. Like, she took like, when I was talking to her, she was like, she took me seriously and addressed what I was saying. And I very much appreciate that, and still do. I appreciated that, and still do. And also, she stayed following me after a lot of people canceled me and tried to cancel her for following me. Like, people would cancel me over gender issues because I'm gender critical, and they would tag her and try to woke scold her for following me, right? And which is just crazy. It was almost always white dudes, like some white dude tagging a black woman who's running for president over some little Twitter, woke scolding, woke shaming, to try and shame her into like unfollowing me. And she never did unfollow me. And I apologized to her once for some of the drama that I probably exacerbated, that they tried to pull her into. And she said, that's all right. She was very kind to me. And so, I don't know, I'm very conflicted, because then she tweeted, like, I also supported Tulsi in a way, like, I volunteered in 2019 for Bernie and Tulsi and Yang, like all three of those campaigns. I was like centrally, well, I don't know about centrally, but I was like one of the more active volunteers in my county for all three of those. And because I just wanted one of them to win. Like, of course, we got none of them, but I just wanted it to be at least one of them. And but recently, Tulsi, she made waves by putting forward a law to have sports gender divisions be biological. So basically, for federally funded sports, that biological women and girls would not be forced to compete against biological males who identify as women. And I think the reason for this is that a lot of girls and a lot of women have asked for this and demanded this, and a lot of them have left sports because there's been so many instances where trans women, trans girls come into girls' sports, come into women's sports, and just physically clobber, injure, and also win. There have been competitions where it was supposed to be women's competitions, and like I think like the gold, silver, and bronze all went to trans women, and all the biological women were just supposed to clap wokely for them and just be like, oh, you know, like, and there have been a lot of injuries, you know, like in MMA, mixed martial arts, I guess, and I think it was that, or boxing or whatever. There was a trans woman that cracked the skulls of, I think, 3 biological women in the ring. And so, yeah, like the people who, anyway, so Tulsi, she knows a lot of those people. I think she's in touch with some of the, I don't know if she was like involved with MMA or some kind of sports. I don't know. I think she has some connection to that. But you know, just as a woman standing up for women, she thought this was an important thing to do, and she got, you know, canceled by all the SJWs about this, all the white activists, mostly a white left on Twitter, but she got more support, and this is what, you know, this has always been the reality, that the people who try to enforce the new gender ideology always try to pretend that they represent like the new paradigm, just because usually nobody will contradict them. You know, they're the loudest ones, but they're so far the minority. Like the vast majority of Tulsi supporters liked her more for it. The vast majority of just people liked her more for it. Like she got so many like probably new follows. I refollowed her after I had unfollowed her for endorsing Biden. So anyway, that was an issue where, you know, she took a lot of heat for standing up for women against truly despicable and insane leftists. You know, what, like, if that's your left, like I just want that left to go do its thing, and then we can have a different left, which is about like actual oppression and working people starving and dying of like not having insulin, not like somebody who got misgendered once or something. Like that's like most of the left, most of the white left in the West, in like Britain and America and Canada and stuff, I feel like they have more sympathy for the person getting misgendered than they do for like some, let's say some white dude, some rural white gun owner dying from lack of insulin. Like they instinctively probably care more about the trans person getting misgendered. So though it's like, it disgusts me that they're called leftists, because I'm a leftist based on historical leftism, which is like 300 years old or more. And they're just this new thing that just, this barnacle or like parasite that just like, you know, attached itself to leftism. And it has nothing to do with leftism, totally contrary to leftism. So yeah, I find that despicable. I was sticking up for Tulsi in the threads on Twitter and on Facebook, but on Facebook and Twitter, she, like, everybody loved her. It was just these few little stupid white leftists. Yeah, it's the white left. I mean, I'm white, yeah, but I listen to people of color. I listen to the global South. I listen to the working class. I'm not a college leftist. I'll never be a college leftist. I mean, I've never been to college. I never will go to college, I'm sure. But even if I did go to college, I would not be a college leftist. You know, I follow the workers themselves. I don't follow their self-appointed spokespeople. So, yeah. Then Angela Walker, bless her soul, did a tweet that was basically just chiming in with all the rest of the SJWs, castigating. And so obviously it's not all white leftists. It's, you know, multiracial, but but the whiter somebody is, the more guaranteed they are almost, or at least the more likely they are. If they're a white leftist, the more likely they are to just be insane PC wokies. But I don't know, I feel like she's brainwashed by that crowd, or she's just trying to go along to get along or something. And so she chimed